The game Hades is a roguelike video game about fighting hordes of demons in the underworld to escape to the surface via violence, flirting, and more violence. The game is incredibly intricate with layers of strategy and reaction timing, but luckily we play tabletop RPGs so we don't need to worry about any of that. Zagreus, Prince of the Underworld, is the main character in Hades and the subject of today's video. See, Zagreus is an incredibly complex character, and I'm not just talking about his personality. His combat style is diverse and ever-changing, with a heavy focus on martial weapon expertise, mainly with melee weapons, but occasionally with ranged. In fact, he uses an incredibly wide arsenal of weapons, typically a different one every single time he tries to escape. Now, normally, that kind of diverse character who's amazing with a bunch of different weapons would be nearly impossible to create, but thanks to Pathfinder 2E's diverse character creation system, I feel incredibly confident that I can create Zagreus within the Pathfinder 2E system and have it reflect almost all of his abilities and capabilities nearly 1-to-1. So here is how to build Zagreus in Pathfinder 2E. I am so sorry for what you're about to see. Horse, tiger, ram, rat, dog, sponsor no jutsu! Today's video is sponsored by the Complete Waifu Handbook Kickstarter, a project by the Loading Crew YouTube channel, which has already crushed its original goal. This supplement for 5e, Pathfinder 1e, and Pathfinder 2e is exactly what it sounds like. It is 200 plus pages of content designed by weebs for weebs, and good God, it's so cringy, but the quality is undeniable. Listen to this. Like, it's so cringy, but it's clear there's so much passion and quality put into this. Passion, quality, and cringe are the best ways to describe this product. It is coming with 7 new races like the Divine Dragon and the Nekomata. It is coming with 12 new class options like the Battle Bride Fighter and the Waifu archetype for Pathfinder 2E. It's also coming with 12 fully fleshed out details NPCs with 4 pages of information, backstory, personalities, battle tactics, and stat blocks for all 3 systems. And that really is the most impressive part of this book to me. Rather than releasing a different version of it for every single system, all 3 systems are represented within the one book, and they've done it pretty elegantly. Tables like this, which will just say, what skill do you roll? Well, in PF1 you roll this, in PF2 you roll this, in 5e you roll this. It's really well done for how ambitious this idea is. There's over 200 pages of quality anime content in this book, so if you've ever wanted to bring a slice of anime into your tabletop RPG, which I know like at least a third of you do, my demographics don't lie, okay? Click my link in the description and support the Complete Waifu Handbook Kickstarter. They are about to crack that $100,000 goal, which will unlock an entire chapter about waifu spells and familiars. Thank you so much, Loading Crew, for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to Zagreus.
Alright, one more time.
Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start, with the ABCs of Pathfinder character creation: ancestry, background, and class. Funny enough, the thing we're starting with is kind of one of the hardest decisions I've had to make for Zagreus. See, yes, it's easy to say, he's from the underworld, he must be a tiefling, but I don't agree with that. First off, the Greek underworld is incredibly different from the hellish, fiery, horned demon underworld of Pathfinder. Additionally, we know Zagreus is not strictly born of the underworld, and I would go into more detail, but that gets into spoiler territory, so go play the game yourself. While it may sound a bit boring, Zagreus is a human. And I thought about doing something fancier, I thought about making him a fetchling, but the Shadow Plane and the Greek underworld have absolutely nothing in common, so that was right out. And to be honest, the Greek pantheon, the gods and goddesses of the Grecian myth, were made in human image. As such, I'm going with human, but it doesn't stop there. You see, Pathfinder 2e has something called a versatile heritage. So while Zagreus at base is a human, he's also an Aasimar. Why not tiefling, I hear you shouting and angrily typing in the comments? Well, Hades does not have the monstrous horned devils that Pathfinder's underworld does. No, unless you're talking about specific creatures like the Furies, the underworld in Hades is run by human-like deities. And Zagreus is a descendant of these gods. So while he is born in the underworld, he is much more like a god than a devil. And Aasimar represents that so much better. Plus, Aasimar are, like, extraordinarily beautiful, and look at him. Hey, so I wrote this script 6 months ago, and mainly didn't touch it, but a little while back, Paizo announced the Pathfinder 2e remaster, and, Aasimar and Tiefling no longer exist. They've been combined into one versatile heritage known as the Nephilim. But since the remaster isn't out yet, I know it comes out in a month, but I don't have that information, we're sticking with Aasimar for the sake of my old script, and because I don't want to wait another month and a half to post this, so suck it up. Sorry if you're watching this in like 4 months and the new content is canon. So we are a human Aasimar, and that gives us a few baseline features. 8 hit points, medium size, 25-foot move speed. It also comes with 2 free ability boosts, which I am going to be putting into strength and dexterity. And once again, I can hear the keyboard tapping in my comments. You should never use both strength and dexterity. You're only going to need one or the other. Well, normally I'd agree with you. Normally it'd be better to bump Constitution for some hit points or Charisma for some skills check bonuses. But bear with me. Both strength and dexterity are going to be our 2 most important ability scores on Zagreus. Additionally, because of our Aasimar versatile heritage, we do get low light vision, which I'm sure is useful for seeing in the dark, shadowy parts of Tartarus. The final step in our ancestry is deciding on our level 1 ancestry feat, and while I do think it would be hilarious to take the feat that gives Zagreus a bonus to diplomacy checks against devils, we're going to be going with Emberkin. This feat has the lineage trait, meaning it can only be taken at level 1, and it literally means he has fire burning within him, like he literally does in the game with his flaming hair, his flaming feet. Fire is his whole motif. It's going to give us a +1 to saving throws against fire effects, as well as the ability to see through non-magical fire, fog, and smoke. And let's be real, that's probably all Asphodel is. Next up is Zagreus' background, and this is the easiest part of the entire character creation. Minor spoiler, skip here if you care. We know Zagreus was brought up and trained not by his father, but by the hero Achilles. Zagreus was literally a martial disciple under Achilles, and as such, it's the easiest choice. We're going to put 1 bonus into strength and 1 bonus into dexterity. We also get proficiency in acrobatics and warfare lore, as well as the catfall skill feat, which is great because every time you start a new run of Hades, you are literally jumping down and falling into Tartarus. And that's the background. Done, nice, and simple. So let's move on to the real part of this video, the class. There's honestly quite a few classes I heavily considered for Zagreus. Thaumaturge would allow him to make use of a bunch of different implements and special abilities and find a weakness to every enemy he has to fight to escape the underworld. And I thought about Sorcerer as well, because he is adept at slinging spells and using different kinds of magics. But there's a problem with both of these options. First off, the Thaumaturge in Pathfinder 2e specifically only uses one-handed weapons. And if you have taken a look at Zagreus' arsenal in the game, all of them are two-handed weapons, meaning Thaumaturge is completely out. And while he does use a lot of different magics, those magics are supplemental to Zagreus' martial fighting style, which Sorcerer just would not give us. No, it's predictable, it's boring, and some of you might not be happy about it, but Zagreus is a fighter. It's the most obvious choice because the fighter is the only class who starts expert proficiency with every single type of weapon in the game except advanced weaponry. But don't click off the video. Look at the time bar. This is a long video. If you thought it ended at he's a fighter, he good, the end, subscribe. You're wrong. You're so wrong. Zagreus is so much more than guy who critically hits stuff. Since we picked fighter, our key ability score can be strength or dexterity, and we are going to pick dexterity. And then for our 4 free ability boosts, we are going to boost strength, dexterity, constitution, and charisma, giving us a basic ability score layout that looks something like this. AJ, put like confetti or something, that feels nice.
Congratulations!
It's unfortunate that we need to leave intelligence and wisdom both so low, but to be honest, Zagreus doesn't really display either of these as prominent traits in his character. After all, he doesn't give up trying to leave Hades, even though that is the most logical way out, and he even tells his father he's trying to leave each time, which is not the smartest decision either. He is a smooth talker though, which is why bumping charisma to 12 feels earned and correct. A lot of this game is talking and making friends, and sometimes more than friends, with the various denizens of the underworld, and Zagreus is really good at what he does. And he's really pretty. I mean, really pretty. Some people might also question the 12 in constitutions. Well, if you've played Hades and you have played with a low-level, unupgraded Zagreus, you know how fragile this guy is. A couple unlucky hits on an unupgraded account and you're dead. Alright, we're a level 1 fighter, and for us that means a lot of free proficiencies. Now, we're already proficient in athletics and acrobatics, plus 3 more skills. I've already mentioned a few times through this video that Zagreus knows how to talk, so diplomacy is a no-brainer. He's also part of the Greek pantheon, so religion just makes sense. It might be tempting to give Zagreus stealth or thievery and really make use of that dexterity score for a skill proficiency, but if we look at his character, he's neither of those things. It's not like he's quietly sneaking out in the middle of the night. He literally walks up to Hades and says, "Hey, I'm gonna try to escape again. See you at dinner if I die." Really, I can only think of one more skill that I think fits Zagreus as a character, and some would call this his defining trait, something I haven't even talked about here today, but is the most integral trait to Zagreus's character. And that's fishing. This man loves to fish, and that's why we're putting our last skill proficiency into survival, because he knows how to catch hellfish in hell ponds to sell to the hell butcher to get hell food. Why are people in hell eating? We're getting 10 hit points from our class, 8 from being a human, and plus 1 from our constitution modifier, giving us a starting hit point total of 19. Not the most in the world, but also not the least. Also from our fighter class, we get Attack of Opportunity and Shield Block. Shield Block will mostly be useless except in one very niche situation, but Attack of Opportunity is very in character for Zagreus, as half of this game is waiting for enemies to leave themselves open to a free attack. See the Theseus boss fight. The Theseus boss fight is literally this in video game form. Fighters also start trained in all armor, but Zagreus is never seen wearing any armor whatsoever. That's part of why we boosted our dexterity to 18, to make use of either being completely unarmored or maybe with some light leather. Zagreus' whole game plan is don't get hit, and a high dexterity-based armor class represents that kind of gameplay. But more important than armor proficiency is our aforementioned weapon proficiency with every weapon in the game. So you can change occasionally from, say, a greatsword, to a spear, to a longbow, to a two-handed shield. Theoretically speaking, of course. The fighter class also gives us some incredible saving throw proficiency, but because of the way we built our stats, our only good one is reflex. For a level 1 class feat, I wanted to pick something that would apply to all 6 weapons in his arsenal, and I was going to pick Exacting Strike, as that is the only level 1 class feat that applies to any weapon in the game. However, then I thought about something. Zagreus doesn't start with all 6 weapons in his arsenal. You need to unlock and buy them. So I think his level 1 class feat should be focused on the one weapon he does start with, his greatsword. Now in the video game, Zagreus' sword has a special move, which is a slower attack that deals more damage. Some kind of powerful attack, if you would. It's power attack. We're taking power attack. Speaking of great swords, it's time to decide on Zagreus' starting equipment, which isn't going to look too special. Because of our massive dexterity score, we don't need to worry about any kind of special armor, so we're going to take leather, which, with all of our proficiencies added together, gives us a starting armor class of 18. Zagreus is also going to start with his great sword, like I said, the Stygian Blade. This is his iconic weapon. It's on all the promo art. If you see a picture of Zagreus holding a weapon, it is almost always Stygius. There's nothing overwhelmingly special about Stygius here at level 1 on Zagreus, but as we level up, we can make more use of Pathfinder 2E's weapon rune system to make Stygius feel even more like it does in the game. And there we have it, a perfectly functional level 1 Zagreus ready to, I don't know, cut a goblin in half or something. But we all know Zagreus is not level 1. But how high level is he? Well, we've seen that Zagreus can defeat gods in 1 versus 1 combat, so clearly he's above level 20, right? I guess I could make Zagreus level 20, but that would be a pain in the butt and make this video 3 hours long. And I know 15 of you want that, but the other 8,985 would rather have this video done before dinner. So I think somewhere in the middle power levels will be great. Not super powerful, but far stronger than your average character. So today we're going to build Zagreus up to level 9. And I'm picking 9 for a very specific reason that will make sense when we get there. Level 2, we get a skill feat and a class feat, and the skill feat is an easy choice. We are going to be taking Bon Mot. If you've ever played Hades, you know that he starts every single boss fight in the game off with some fancy or special quip or cunning little joke that almost always results in the boss getting angry at Zag, which is exactly what Bon Mot does. For a class feat, we're going to take Lunge. This is where we have to stretch how a mechanical video game aspect translates into a mechanical RPG tabletop aspect, but I think that the Lunge action represents the dash strike really well. In Hades, the dash strike allows you to reposition and attack something farther away or from a different angle. And while Lunge really only lets you attack something farther away and doesn't change where you're currently standing, I think it's a fun way to visualize it as Zagreus dashing forward, attacking, and then dashing back into position. It also plays even more into our main game plan of keeping distance between us and our enemy. Remember, we have a decent armor class, but we're not super tanky, so we don't want to be up close to our enemies if we can avoid it. Now here's where things get interesting. We're not done with level 2. It's obvious that Zagreus is far more powerful than an average character would be. So to help represent this, we are going to be using the free archetype variant. Also because it's how 80% of people play this game. I won't be covering the rules for the free archetype variant in this video, but if you want to know more about it, check out this video real quick and then come back here. Now, I initially wanted to take the sorcerer archetype right at level 2, get Zagreus' magic online so that he can attack with his physical weapons and also use magic to represent his casts in the game, but then I realized that I have made a critical error. The sorcerer archetype has a requirement of 14 charisma in order to take it. And our current Zagreus only has 12. So that's not in the cards right now. We'll have to wait quite a bit longer to pick that up. But what we can pick up is just as important, and that is the Archer dedication. Right now, this gives us almost nothing. This gives us critical specialization with weapons in the bow group. Stay with me. I know it sounds crazy. That is horrible to spend a feat on, a critical specialization for one weapon group, especially when we're not even using that weapon yet. Stay with me. Basically, if we critically hit someone with a bow, it immobilizes them and they need to spend an action to take the arrow out to be able to move again. Pretty cool. Not super important, but cool. We'll be coming back to this dedication in a few levels. Level 3 is upon us, and with it comes a skill increase that we're going to put into diplomacy so we can keep up a little bit better with our physical skills. Sure, we could bump athletics up to stronger if we wanted to, but I would rather get diplomacy on a similar level with our other physical skills. especially since we're relying on using Bon Mo a lot. We also get access to a general feat, and there's nothing super duper flavorful here, so we're going to be going with Fleet to speed Zagreus up with a flat 5-foot speed bonus permanently. And this might seem generic, but remember, Zagreus does have Hermes speeding him up all the time. Hermes is sort of a support god. None of his effects outright make Zagreus more powerful, but it does make the boons of the other gods given to him even more powerful in their own right. These are supportive background effects, much like general feats. Level 4, we're going to grab Swipe as our class feat, which finally lets us attack multiple enemies at once, which is something you can always do in the video game Hades, but is a lot harder to do in Pathfinder. Luckily, this works with all weapons, so even if we switch to something like a spear, we can still swipe with it. For a skill feat, we'll take Dubious Knowledge. This plays into the he said, she said knowledge lore of the Hades game. It represents gaining information from different characters and not knowing which of it is true and which is false, which is great, because if you fail a recall knowledge check while you have this skill feat, you get both some true information and false information. And finally, because of the free archetype variant, we can take an archetype feat from our archer dedication. So we are going to take Quick Shot. This allows us to draw our longbow and shoot it for a single action, which is great if we need to swap weapons in the middle of combat. We can drop our greatsword, draw a longbow, and shoot it all for one action. Speaking of ranged options, since we're a little bit higher level now, it's safe to assume we have some decent money saved up and could afford a +1 composite shortbow. Since Zagreus is always in and out of close range with enemies, we don't want to use a longbow because that incurs a penalty if fired within 30 feet of an enemy. Plus, adding composite to the short bow allows us to add half of our strength modifier to our damage rolls. Right now, with a strength of 16, half of 3 is only going to be 1, but it's still better than nothing. Level 5 is huge. Level 5 is where everything takes off and starts making sense. We get Fighter Weapon Mastery. At this level, you pick one weapon group as a fighter. Every other weapon group stays at expert proficiency, but the one you choose increases to master. Normally, this is how a fighter is. They have their one chosen specific weapon that they're good with. Swords, or spears, or bows. And you'd normally be stuck to one of those if you weren't pulling some sneaky shenanigans.
You mean shenanigans?
Now bear with me, this next decision is going to sound insane and pointless. But bear with me. At levels 5, it's safe to assume Zagreus has every single one of his infernal arms. He has gauntlets, a firearm, a longbow, a shield, a spear, and a sword. All completely different weapon groups in Pathfinder 2e. And our fighter weapon mastery only boosts one of them. Now, I will not be going into full runic specifics for all 6 of the infernal arms in this video, just to keep it at a decent length. But I will be giving you the exact weapons I will be using for Zagreus out of the Pathfinder 2e handbooks. And his 6 weapons are the greatsword, the long spear, the throwing shield, the composite short bow, the gauntlets, and a brand new firearm from the newest book, Treasure Vault, which now that I'm reading it off of my script is not a new book anymore. But I'm talking about the Barricade Buster. Yeah, it's technically an orc weapon, which means you can only take it if you're an orc, but we're going to look past that for the sake of being cool, and hopefully a good GM would let us. Now, that insanely weird choice that I'm making is for our fighter weapon mastery, we're picking firearms. I know, we've been using bows and a sword almost this entire time, so why are we boosting firearms? Well, it's for a very specific reason. Let's go ahead and take a look at that level 2 archer dedication a bit more closely, shall we? Whenever you gain a class feature that grants you expert or greater proficiency in certain weapons, you also gain that proficiency rank in all simple and martial weapons in the bow weapon group. Well, that's convenient. Our fighter weapon mastery did just give us greater proficiency in certain weapons.
Oh, yeah. It's all coming together.
So thanks to our archetype, our bow weapon group proficiency is also increasing to master, meaning we're a master in all bows and firearms. This means that for now, Zagreus is going to be more of a ranged fighter. Also at level 5 are 4 free ability boosts, which are going to be going into strength, dexterity, constitution, and charisma. Now we're a threat. Our short bow is now getting a +2 to damage because it's a composite short bow, and we are repping a monstrous +15 to hit with both bows and firearms. For reference, a level 5 polar bear has a 22 armor class, meaning we hit them on a 7 and critically hit on a 17 or higher. And this is without any runes. Finally, we bump our athletics proficiency up to expert and we take a new ancestry feat. Now, there is going to be a pretty big spoiler here, so if you want to skip that, go to this timestamp in the video and fast forward. But after being called a demigod and the god of nothing for almost the entire game, Achilles theorizes that Zagreus is actually a full god and is the god of blood. So I think the Aasimar feat, Blessed Blood, would be perfect for that, allowing Zagreus's blood to be used to craft holy water and dealing bonus damage against corrupt beings like undead. Wow, that was a lot just for level 5, and we've got 4 more levels to go, and we're already on page 6 of this script. So let's move right along to level 6. This is actually a pretty awkward level for us. At level 6, there are no other fighter feats that are super integral to our playstyle. So we're going to do what we do best and do something incredibly cheeky. First, we're going to spend our free archetype feat on a third feat from the Archer archetype. This will actually unlock the archetype. If you're not aware, you need to spend 3 feats in one archetype before you can take another. We're going to take Parting Shot, allowing us to spend 2 actions to step and make a ranged attack against a target, and the target is flat-footed, or now off guard in the remaster, against that attack. This is going to lower their armor class by 2, making our already critically threatening short bow even more likely to crit. And don't forget, short bows have deadly D10, so on a critical hit, we're rolling a whole extra D10 along with doubling everything else. And as a bonus, the Parting Shot feat just needs to be made with a ranged weapon, so we can do it with firearms as well. So, we have taken a third feat from Archer. We have unlocked our archetype. So instead of taking a class feat this level, we're going to be taking another archetype feat. We're going to be taking the Mauler Dedication. If the Archer archetype was a small cheat in the system to get us an extra proficiency and weapon group bump, the Mauler Dedication outright destroys and breaks the game. Let's read, shall we? Whenever you gain a class feature that grants you expert or greater proficiency in weapons, you also gain that proficiency rank in melee weapons that require 2 hands to wield or have the 2-hand trait. You know what requires 2 hands to wield? Great swords and long spears. Suddenly, we have master proficiency with bows, firearms, spears, and great swords. The only 2 weapons we are still expert with is our shield and our gauntlets, and the shield could have a case for it. There is a feat in the Knights of Lastwall book known as Everstand Stance, and this allows you to wield your shield with 2 hands, turning it into its own unique weapon. By logic, because it can be wielded with 2 hands, that should allow our new Mauler Dedication to increase our proficiency to master, right? Well, rules as intended? Maybe. Rules as written? No. Because the stance is what turns it into a weapon, the weapon we are now wielding does not require 2 hands to wield because it can be held as a normal shield, and it doesn't technically have the 2-hand trait. So, on very mechanical specifications, no, it does not match the wording of the Mauler Dedication. I, as a GM, would allow it, because it is still a 2-handed weapon you are using. But I can also understand why GMs might not. So, the shield is a maybe, but if you do allow it, that is 5 out of 6 weapons at master proficiency at level 6. We're also going to pick up the Glad Hand skill feat at level 6 just to make people like us more. Level 7, we get another skill increase, bumping Diplomacy up to Master, and another general feat. This time we're going to take Untrained Improvisation, simply because we have so many skills that we are not proficient in. But if you're level 7 with Untrained Improvisation, you can now add your character level to all skill checks that you are not proficient in, which remember, is most of them. So that basically just gave us a flat +7 to every single other skill in the game. Our perception also gets a massive upgrade from the fighter class feature Battlefield Surveyor, giving us a bonus to proficiency, increasing us to Master Perception, and giving us a permanent +2 bonus to initiative rolls while using Perception. We also get Weapon Specialization, giving us a flat +3 to all damage dealt with Master Proficiency weapons, and +2 with our Expert weapons. Level 8 comes around, and honestly, once again, the fighter doesn't have a lot that we're interested in. We could take Sudden Leap, which represents Zag's ability to dash across the battlefield and strike an enemy, and Incredible Aim would be useful for our ranged weapons, but instead, we're just going to take 2 more feats, both from our Mauler archetype. First, Clear the Way is just the charged spear spin from the video game. You are pushing everything away from you. And Knockdown is just great on any fighter. We could have technically taken this earlier, but taking this from the archetype now will allow us to unlock it at this level, letting us take a whole new archetype if we want to at level 10. As for a skill feat, you can't really go wrong. Rapid Mantle is great for climbing and getting up really fast, and Shameless Request is hilarious. Level 9, we push Acrobatics up to Expert, our Fortitude saves reach Master because of the Juggernaut class feature, and we get a new Ancestry feat. And believe it or not, this is when Zagreus' magic finally comes online. Thanks to the human multi-talented Ancestry feat, we get to take 1 multi-class dedication, and now that our charisma is finally 14 because of our level 5 ability score increase, we can finally take that sorcerer dedication. As for the bloodline, even though I spent the first half of this video fighting against the Grecian underworld as being devils as we know it in Pathfinder, I do think the diabolic bloodline fits very well for Zagreus with its themes. Especially because it starts with Produce Flame, which is basically Zagreus' starting base game cast. And finally, to round us out at level 9, we get Combat Flexibility. And this is what takes us from a decent multi-weapon fighter to a great multi-weapon master. Every single day during daily preparations, we pick an extra level 8 or lower fighter feat that can be changed every single day. Do we plan to be shooting more often than fighting? Maybe we'll take double shot. Do we think we want to use something that is better for our two-handed attacks? Do we think we're going to be using our bows more today? Let's take point blank shot. Are we using our spear? Maybe we'll grab revealing stab. Hell, do we finally want to use our shield? Ever stand stance can be taken with combat flexibility. This is the final piece of customization that really lets Zagreus be the weapons master he is in the game. The only black sheep of our arsenal are our poor little gauntlets. Right now, there's just no way to get them to master proficiency without sacrificing something else. And gauntlets also are almost impossible to become proficient in, as they're in the brawling weapon group. You see, there are some archetypes like the martial artist, but that only grants your proficiency in unarmed strikes. And unarmed strikes are separate from the brawling weapon group. Now, we could have picked brawling for our fighter weapon mastery at level 5, but I really think we'd get more use out of having the firearms, as firearms are in the exact same boat. There's not really an archetype out there that would let you be proficient in just firearms. Going forward from here, Zag will just get stronger and stronger, and once he is level 13, he will be legendary weapon proficiency with his sword, spear, bow, firearm, and if your GM is nice, shield. A character with legendary proficiency in 4, maybe 5 different weapons is not something I ever even thought was possible when I started building Zagreus. And that's what I love about Pathfinder 2E's character creation and advancement system, is a lot of the times you don't know what you can do until you start trying to do it. And that has been so much fun. And I feel like even 3 years later, I'm learning things about this system that I never knew. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do leave a like and a comment telling me what you thought about it, things you agreed with, disagreed with, and most importantly, if you want to see me make more characters as heavily in-depth as this. Shout out to AJ, who not only did an amazing job on this video, but also had to do it in like a 4-day time constraint that I thrust on him by giving him the footage late. AJ, you're amazing. As always, let's get some comments with some love for AJ. Mainly because he deserves it, but also because it boosts the algorithm and makes the video do better. Thanks so much, y'all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no nat ones.